Hello and welcome to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy,
And I'm Claire.
and we're here to talk about some of the disturbing things that go on in the world, past and present. We feel like not knowing doesn't mean the crazy doesn't exist.
So we're going to scar you with the knowing.
Enjoy. So, what are we talking about today, Claire?
Today's piece of shit is Damon Williams. I'm just going to throw it out there that this is a more current case happening in the 2000s in South Los Angeles, California. I'm also going to tell you, I'm disappointed in the way people do news articles because they're not nearly as in-depth as like the later articles when people throw out all the business. I was telling Dave that this morning, that they used to do, well, like if people were admitted in the hospital, that was a little section of the paper. Like they just aired all the dirty laundry out there because there was a lack of entertainment, my guess would be. That was the reality TV, but it was published.
And turns out they encouraged the reading back in the day.
Anyway, so that was my long-winded way of saying we're just going to kick right off when the first time this feller makes waves in the news. So on the night of June 23rd, 2007, 17-year-old Patricia, her last name is redacted, was working as a prostitute in South Los Angeles.
At 17?
Dude, I did the same thing. It was like, I would like to know what was going on in her young little life, that was her only option. Anyway, she goes into the gas station to grab some cigarettes when she bumps into Damon. She then agrees to get in his car and they go drive to an alley. Once they're in the privacy of that alley, Damon offered Patricia some crack cocaine, which they proceed to smoke together. After all the smoking, Patricia begins to orally copulate Damon. Now, that turned into consensual vaginal sex when she felt Damon putting his finger in her anus. Shut up, Andrea.
Sorry. I figured when you specified that it was vaginal, that I was like, there's going to be some butt play going on.
We're going places. So she then pushes his hand away because she wasn't interested in anal sex, to which makes Damon pissed off. My guess would be because he feels like if he's paying for it, he gets whatever he wants. So Damon then becomes violent, shoves Patricia from the vehicle, and proceeds to hit and kick her on the ground. Now, obviously, poor Patricia is so scared. It's got to be scary. She's just knocked out of a car, and he's stomping on her.
And he just had a finger in her ass.
I feel like that's the least scary part of the night right now, Andrea.
I feel like a finger in your ass could be pretty scary to a 17-year-old girl, prostituting or not. It's not an entrance. It's an exit.
So he begins to choke the life out of her. Naturally, she's struggling to breathe and eventually loses consciousness. Now, he lets go briefly. I don't know if maybe her passing out scared him. And she manages to come to and starts to get up, but then is smacked by Damon on the right side of her head, and then he begins choking her again. So either, I don't know if he thought he killed her, or I don't know why he stopped choking her.
He had to play with his junk.
So then he drags her back into the car and begins having vaginal sex with her again, this time by force. He then anally penetrated Patricia, still by force. At this point, Patricia is screaming for help, any help. Damon tells her to shut up, adding, "Bitch, I'll kill you, and I'll kill you if you say anything else." Patricia thought for sure she was going to die.
Poor thing.
Damon said, "This ain't gonna work. Give me more head."
You.
And forced her to suck him off. I was like, when the assault ended, Patricia saw a police car drive by and went running for her life, wearing just a shirt, naked from the waist down, screaming, "He raped me, he raped me." Now, police were in the area because a man had heard all the commotions of, like, since he knocked her out of the vehicle and was beating her. A man had heard that, and he called the police, and that's when police got there and encountered her half naked, screaming, "He raped me." Now, after Patricia got in the patrol car, the officers see Damon appear from the side of his Bronco. They ordered him to move to a fence along the alley, but instead of complying with what officers were directing him to do, he takes off running. I feel like you've seen plenty of cop episodes to know the scene of freeze or get over here, and they do exactly the opposite. So He takes off running, and officers give chase, to which Damon eventually misses his footing and goes tumbling, and officers are all over him like stink on a bug.
Stink on a bug? I done ain't never heard that one before. I heard of a stink bug, but I ain't never heard of stink on a bug.
Well, how many bugs you been sniffing?
Apparently not as many as you.
Exactly. Now let's move on, shall we? Quit getting distracted.
It's your fault.
And we're able to arrest him. Now, Patricia is taken to the hospital where a nurse practitioner and a forensic nurse examiner would conduct a sexual assault exam on her. They would notate that she had a hematoma, or a blood blister, on her scalp, as well as swelling and redness on her left brow. They also observed petechia, or busted blood vessels, in her right eye, which can happen from blunt trauma or increased capillary pressure, like being strangled. She also had an abrasion on the right side of her jaw, a 2-centimeter cut on her right ear. She also had bruising to the right side of her chest, her clavicle, and her right thigh. And mind you, she's 17. They did not see any genital injuries externally, and Patricia had declined an analscopic exam that could have revealed internal injuries or anything like that. And I don't blame her. She was already like...
Yeah, I wouldn't want my ass violated by the doctors neither.
Can we shove this into your crevices just to get a good look? I'd be like, I just want to get out of here. I want to go home. I want this whole thing to be done and over with.
Yeah, poor thing.
Now, they do take swabs for DNA purposes, including Patricia's mouth, her neck, her breasts, her vulva, anus, and vagina. The results did match, and the odds, by the way, being 1 in 55 million that another male having the same DNA profile committed the crime. Not to mention, Damon was right there. They caught him red-handed.
His hands were red? Sorry.
Probably from smacking her. You insensitive sumbitch. Now, I will say, this case takes a while to go to court. So I'm going to assume that he was out on bond or whatever. Because, let's face it, the police probably did the whole... As much as it was he roughed up a prostitute real bad...
She was a prostitute, and unfortunately, that's bottom of the barrel of priorities for these fellers.
That's what I kind of felt like. So I feel like also going to court, I think of all the times where they say, like, if a victim fails to testify or they can't find them anymore, they're in the wind. It's one of those... It's a waste of police efforts. And if she doesn't want to... I don't want to say she didn't want to cooperate with the examination, that she could decide not to go to court because she doesn't want to be a part of any of that, but it takes a while for that to go to court. Now, meanwhile, after this incident, another man would hit Patricia in the head with a crowbar, which would put her into a coma for the next 2 years and would leave her wheelchair bound.
Oh, shit. Was she still prostituting, or was this just like some random dude that just assaulted her?
I feel like she was probably still prostituting. And I feel like that's probably who smacked her upside the crowbar. Which I was like, what the fuck is going on in southern Florida? In Southern California?
Might as well be Florida.
Because you figure that's also like a serial killer alley. But it's just like, what the fuck? She's lucky she lived twice now. But I don't feel like there's a lot of wheelchair-bound prostitutes in the world.
She's like permanently wheelchair bound?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
So obviously, if your victim is in a coma, I feel like that's also cause for delays for her case of getting justice from the original rape.
Yeah, you think?
But put a pin in that one, because meanwhile, fuckface is out on the town. And just so we're clear, I don't mean for it to sound like I agree with prostitutes not getting any justice because they're less than, because I don't. I just think it's sad that they live a very risky lifestyle, and I feel like there's not a lot of police efforts put into serving that justice because they end up not cooperative with investigations for fear of probably getting arrested for something else, and they don't want to be on the radar, they don't want to be a snitch, they don't want to deal with the whole scenario, and the violation of just the examination and then going to court and you're put on the stand as well.
Well, even the victims of rape that aren't prostitutes, they end up having to defend themselves based off of the way they're dressed, the way they were talking to the guys, just in general, everything having to do with the encounter with that individual, their entire lives are put on the stand. So as a prostitute,
Yeah.
I would assume that if it's already hard for someone else to come forward because their lives are going to be put under a microscope, that for someone with a questionable lifestyle, they feel like they have no choice.
So that's why I feel like it takes a while to see a courtroom. But I just don't want it to seem like I feel bad for them because I do think justice should be provided for them because
It should be for everybody, yeah.
even if they're a prostitute, that doesn't mean they consent to everything, and it certainly doesn't mean that you can beat them up. And just saying is that I feel like they deserve justice. They're not second-class citizens, and there are countries where prostitution is legal and they don't get smacked around and abused and all that. And whether you're a prostitute or not, just agreeing to have sex with somebody doesn't mean they can slap you around because they don't get their way, and doesn't mean you need to engage in all the orifice porking.
I didn't realize, and I realize this makes me full-blown ignorant here, so fuck you in advance, but I didn't realize prostitution was still in the US like
What?
enough of a thing.
What?
Yeah. I thought prostitution was more prevalent in like the 70s and 80s in the US. We're in the 2000s now,
You need to watch some Cops.
and you got a 17-year-old prostitute?
I told you that one episode that was on whatever in the knockoff live PD, whatever one they started up. I forget what it's called now, and they pulled up on that guy, and they were like parked somewhere.
Oh yeah, and he's like, she's my girlfriend, I swear.
It's like he's been pulled over for what is it? No, it's not soliciting. What is it when it's like it's the feller that's being arrested?
It's soliciting.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. But no, they still do it. Apparently, you don't need too much training.
Sorry.
Okay, so that'll bring us to Monday night, September 17th, 2012. Faustino Flores is driving to a friend's house when he notices a black Ford Bronco driving slowly in front of him on Grant Avenue. The vehicle turns down 93rd Street, and so does Faustino. He then stops at a liquor store. This is Faustina. He stops at the liquor store, and then on his way back to heading to his friends, he sees that same Bronco again. It's now on 94th Street, and he sees a black man, at least 6 foot tall, standing at the back with the rear door open. Faustino figured the man was dumping trash from his vehicle since that's what people do over in that area, which I was like, fucking pigs. He's littering, but that's what people do over there. Now, if you're not familiar with a Bronco, that back door, it's not like an SUV that either opens up or it drops down like a truck bed. It opens to the side. So because it opens like that, Faustino couldn't see what the man was actually doing or if he did dump anything because it blocked his view. But he continues on his way to his friends. That wasn't too far. That's on 94th Street, right? His friend lives on 93rd, so it's just a block over. Now, Faustino's grandfather also happened to live at that house. So when he walks in, he sees him watching TV. Now, he's hardly there before his grandfather's yelling, "There's a car burning!" Now, Faustino runs outside to see where the fire is and sees where the Bronco had been parked when he hears someone say, "It's a body!" And he runs to see a body on fire. He tells his grandpa to grab the fire extinguisher, to which I don't understand why if somebody yells fire or says there's a fire, if you've got a fire extinguisher, why wouldn't you have brought that shit with you? And if somebody yells there's a body on fire over here, I don't know that I would run to go see it either. I think I'd grab the fire extinguisher.
No. Unless it was more of there's a fire and he ran over to render aid and then realized there's a body and maybe he thought he could help pull the body out, at which point
maybe
grabbing the fire extinguisher is a moot point, because if you're closer to that there fire and can pull a person out of it and then put the fire out,
I don't know.
You know?
So his grandfather grabs the fire extinguisher and Faustino puts out the fire. Now, there is a body that was burning. It was not a car on fire, it's just the body. So I don't know where it got confused that somebody thought a car was on fire.
Was the body on fire in the car?
No.
Or on the ground?
I think somebody assumed there was a car burning because you would think that on the side of a street it wouldn't be a body. But initially, the police department would say that they were investigating it and didn't know if the person was set on fire or had set herself on fire, to which I did do like a, what?
That's not the way I think anybody would choose to go.
Well,
I know it's happened.
I was going to say, apparently, so that ran down there are people who commit suicide by setting themselves on fire. I don't understand why you would do that.
Having done tangoed with the fire before, I can say that's not how I would choose to go.
No, but if you Google it, you'll see a lot of awful things.
I'm not gonna.
Why would you do that? It's the worst way to go.
Turns out my search history is fucked all on its own. I don't need to look up weird shit.
So, arson investigators with the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office would arrive to find the body mostly burned, including the remnants of sandals on the victim's feet. An LAPD officer that had also responded found a large gold hoop earring in a nearby grassy area. The body was taken to the coroner's office, where it was later identified as 17-year-old high school senior Terrey Wright.
She's not a prostitute, right?
She was last seen by her family a couple of days before her body was found.
What?
Dude, I did the same thing. It's like, she's 17.
Not saying that you gotta keep tabs on your kids like that, but
I feel like I get that this is Monday night that her body was burning, but I was like, she's 17 and she's a high school senior. Why wasn't she missing? And then I was like, maybe she was at a friend's house, is what my brain hole was doing. So maybe it was like a weird circumstances. But we'll get into it. Now, at the time, she had been living with her sister, who had seen her change into a black dress and shoes to go see a friend. Her sister, Siobhan, would identify the gold loop earring that police found as the one Terry had been wearing the day she last saw her. Now, when Siobhan had gotten back home later that night, she saw that her sister had not returned home or tried to call her. It was odd, so Siobhan checked her Facebook page, but she wasn't active on there. At some point, Siobhan would notice that there had been calls to her phone line from a number with a prefix 600 that Terry had called. Police were later able to determine the number belonged to Tyshawn Givens. Now, Tyshawn had met Terry through Facebook when she messaged him asking how to make some money. Tyshawn had given the false representation on his Facebook that he was a male entertainer or porn actor when he was actually a tattoo artist. Yeah. Terry had wanted to work in the porn industry to earn money, and Tyshawn told her that she could make thousands doing porn, and then gave her his number and told her to text him. And now, mind you, my brain went, is no one considering she's fucking 17? Well, regardless of if she's interested in working in the porn industry, that she's 17 years old.
It's another 17-year-old.
But yes, when I told you she was identified as 17-year-old Terry Wright, a high school senior.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, after that exchange of messages between the two, Terry would agree to meet at his house on September 15th around 2 to 3 p.m. The two talked and engaged in oral sex.
I'm not responding to that, if that's what you're waiting for.
I was waiting for it. But Terry was wanting to know how she could make cash that day. Tyshawn suggested doing some prostitution on Western Avenue, where there were other women that did that over there. Terry agreed to give it a try. The two then walked down 29th and Western Avenue. Tyshawn sat on a bench while Terry stood on a corner until somebody drove up. The first man to stop picked Terry up, and in less than 5 minutes they returned.
That was fast!
The first man to stop picked Terry up in less than 5 minutes of them being out there. Now they would return in less than 15 minutes. A short time later, another person would pull up, and again, Terry left and would be back in about 10-15 minutes. This continued 2 to 3 more times.
Oh, Jesus.
After all of that, Tyshawn said there was a lull in customers. Then another car drives. He sees the lights flash, hears a door slam, and Terry's off again. He couldn't really see anything more than that because it's dark out and the lights were shining on him.
I'm sorry, this is all in one night?
Uh-huh.
How many guys has she left with? I'm not victim shaming here, okay? I'm really not. I'm just... But Like, that is an alarming rate of men shopping for sex.
So evidently this area is known for prostituting.
Evidently.
Evidently, yeah. So I feel like since she was over there and that's where people go to pick chicks up, is why it didn't take her long. But my eyeballs flew open too because I didn't realize they were putting in that much work. So I don't know.
Sorry.
When I was reading it, I was just like, the first feller pulled up, then the next one pulled up. They do this 2 to 3 more times, and I was like, that seems really gross. Is all I can say.
Really gross.
And then I wasn't sure if since she sucked off this feller before she got started, if maybe she's just doing the same thing with them. I don't know what all occurred, but because I was also thinking she's 17. That's a lot of fellers in one day.
Yeah. How many guys is that so far? Like 5 or 6?
Yeah, well, 6 if you count Tyshawn.
Yeah, that's
a lot. That's a lot of penises in a day.
Like,
I don't want to see another penis.
I don't care if she's varying between her all her cracks and crevices, whether it's a hand job, a mouth, her ass, her vagina. I don't care if it's just every hole, every which way. That's still a lot of random penises. And I'm not a prude.
You're not a prostitute either.
I sure fucking am not. I realize I just made some obnoxious comments. However, I'm not victim shaming. It's more or less, like I just said before, I didn't realize prostitution was such a big thing still. I thought it kind of died down with, all the murderings that took place in the 70s and 80s. I thought it was less of a thing. So to find out that it's 5 or 6 fellers for one chick in one night, that's shocking.
Yeah, back to back.
And she's only 17.
Yeah. Definitely sloppy seconds.
Sloppy sixth. Fellers out there, if you're just nice to a girl and you woo her, I realize it's a little more effort and work for you, but turns out you will have a lady at home that you can have sex with if you're nice to her. You ain't got to pay for it. I mean, I guess you do because you're taking her on dates, but whatever. You won't go to jail for it, and you won't have somebody else that's previously been in that hole.
Ew. But I was shocked as well, because again, I didn't realize there were that many penises that a prostitute saw in an evening. I just thought it was like Pretty Woman. Maybe less with the fancy hotel, but more of a...
less billionaire action.
Yeah, right. Anyway, so it's getting dark. There's a lull in customers. Then that vehicle pulls up, but all he sees is the headlights, hears the car door shut, and thinks it's just like the many times before. So Tyshawn's still on the bench waiting for Terry to return, like she had been. And after about an hour, he starts to get real worried. So he sends her a text message asking her where she's at. No response. He waits even longer. He thinks maybe another hour. I don't believe him.
He's not worried. He's sitting there going, no, there could have been 5 more fellers up in this. Where is she at?
No, he called and then texted her again during that chunk. Still no reply. So he decides he's going home. So he takes the bus home.
What?
I know. I was like, what a dick.
He got her into this mess.
Right.
By encouraging this, and then he's just going to leave her?
He was probably getting hungry.
Apparently, if he opens his mouth, he could get some nut.
Right.
There's plenty of fellers out there.
Yeah. I'm surprised nobody propositioned him. He's over there.
They may have. Maybe that's what made him leave. Yeah. He kept getting propositioned. He's like, I got to get out of here.
He gets home. It's around 3 a.m. when he sees he finally gets a response from Terry's phone that she's on her way back. Tyshawn decides to get some sleep, and he figures he'll talk to her later. He's probably pissed because he waited around for her and she was gone the rest of the night.
He was pissed because he saw several more possible Johns that he could have made money off of, because I'm guessing he's not just sitting there out of the kindness of his heart. He's expecting a cut of all this here backbending work she's doing.
Now, he would later learn that Terry was dead from her Facebook page.
What?
And mind you, that
Why?
was Saturday night that she was doing that. And then Monday morning, her body is the one that was being burned. So the Los Angeles County coroner would conduct an autopsy on Terry where he would not be able to determine if she had any injuries to her genital area or anal area because of how badly decomposed it was.
Is it decomposed or burned?
So a little bit of both. Like, it's breaking down, it's not fresh.
Poor thing. It makes me really sad because this is your second 17-year-old.
That was a prostitute.
That these girls feel like that's all they have to do or all they're capable of doing.
And a very hard life.
All joking aside, that's so sad.
Well, the coroner does see that her hyoid bone in her neck was fractured and had blood around it, which meant that Terry was alive when there was pressure put on her neck. Basically, she was strangled to death until her neck did that little...
Poor thing.
Now, the possibly only good news in this is that they did not find soot in her lungs, which meant she was not alive when her body was set on fire. And that did make me relieved for her because it's already probably just whatever she endured was enough. Being burnt alive didn't need to be another thing
she had to endure. Yeah.
Now, her time of death was between 1 and 4 a.m. on Sunday, September 16th. It wouldn't be until the following Monday night that her body was found burning. Now, they would notice a red stain on Terry's earring that was recovered and had it analyzed. It was blood and ended up having a male DNA present, which ended up matching Damon. They would also test anal and vaginal swabs taken from Terry, which resulted in the presence of sperm found from a single male source, also matching Damon. Which I thought was interesting because if she was doing prostituting, that's why I figured she was just doing blowjobs all afternoon. Well, I figured also 17, maybe she was still a virgin.
I thought the other feller had sex with her.
No, she sucked him off.
Oh, I can't keep up.
Patricia was the first girl who was raped and was a prostitute and barely escaped with her life. This young lady decided an afternoon into the late evening for being a prostitute, and that was the last activity she dabbled in. I mean, how dangerous do you have to say prostitution is that the first day she decides to be a prostitute, she's dead?
Yeah, I want to know the kind of area she's living in, because shit.
Super bad. Now, Damon would be arrested on the 17th of September. He was also charged with, because he's also got that charge from the assault, forcible sodomy, and rape of Patricia, who was 18, or now 18 at the time.
Yeah, the other girl that was in the coma.
Yeah, Patricia. Which is what makes me think that he was out on, waiting trial. That when he was arrested, they throw that one back up. Now, he's charged with Terrey Wright's murder. He wasn't charged with her rape because they couldn't prove it wasn't consensual, which made me eye roll.
That's stupid. Just because they couldn't see trauma or anything like that because her body was set on fire, I don't think it's that far-fetched. Especially since he's got a history of doing the raping.
I did an eye roll because the fact that clearly she had vaginal and anal sex with him, and we know from the previous chick that it probably was not consensual. But I get that there's nobody to say that it wasn't, so they didn't even bother charging him with it, because how do you get it to stick when there's nobody to say that it wasn't consensual? Yeah. But that's why I rolled, because he's a piece of shit. Now, the police would get a warrant for Damon's cell phone, which placed him in the vicinity of 93rd and Grand Avenue between 9:26 and 9:45 on September 17th, which was where Terry's body was found. Now, during his trial, his girlfriend from 2009 to 2010, they were roughly together 7 to 8 months, she's referenced as TT, testifies that he had forcibly sodomized her in February of 2012. TT would go on to say that they were having vaginal sex when Damon asked her if they could do anal, and she said, "Hell no!" Undeterred, he would roll TT onto her stomach, grab both of her hands, hold them above her head, press his chest into her back, and use his legs to spread hers, then force his penis into her anus. She tried to get away and was crying for him to stop, but he didn't stop. He continued to rape her. When he finished his anal assault, he would continue to hold TT down on the bed until he fell asleep. Eventually, she fell asleep too. When she finally woke up, Damon was gone. TT did not call the police initially because she didn't want her neighbors or anyone else to know what had happened. She does eventually come forward after she told her mother what Damon had done to her when she sees that he had been arrested with the connection of Terry's murder. Naturally, her mom's like, call the police, which she did.
I mean, better late than never, I guess.
Sorta, because it's one of those, she didn't go to the police, there's no,
Yeah.
like, they couldn't, she came forward, yeah. At least this is another pattern of he asked for it, he was told no, he doesn't take no for an answer, and proceeds to do what the fuck he wants to. The only difference would be this was his girlfriend and not a prostitute. Now, Damon's wife,
What?
Cicely Freya,
What?
I knew you'd like that one, would testify that her husband almost always had a red gas can in the back of his Bronco. She would say that when she heard that a woman had been set on fire near where Damon's nephew lived, that she tried to call him, but he didn't answer. She didn't see him until 7:15 the next night. Mind you, the two were in the process of getting a divorce.
Was it because he also liked to stick it in her ass when she didn't want it?
She doesn't testify anything on that, but she is reminded that since they are technically still married at this point, she does not have to testify since it's not finalized and they're spouses. Now, his mom would even call her to remind her she doesn't have to testify. I was like, I'm not surprised. He seems like a piece of shit, and I'm honestly surprised they were married at all.
Yeah.
Now, when Damon is in custody awaiting for his trial, he would call his wife from jail, sometimes with his sister or his mother also on the line. 300 plus phone calls from the time he's in jail to awaiting trial through his trial were recorded.
How long was he in jail for? Like, is that span of 300 calls in 30 days? Because that's a lot of phone calls.
No, it's like 2 years.
Oh, that's not that much.
No, but
That's not even once a day.
it's 300 phone calls recorded.
Well, I mean, that sucks. That sucks for anybody that's got to go back and listen for any type of confession.
Well, it doesn't
But-
stop people from being morons with the shit being recorded. And he would ask his wife to search on Google to see how long DNA, quote, stays alive. He would also say, they're trying to set me up. Mind you, in none of the 300 phone calls does he say, I didn't do it. Which I agree with the prosecution. That speaks volumes. Never does he say, I didn't do it. He just does the, somebody's setting me up. I didn't do it. Is not what he says. Now, in a separate phone call to his wife, he would tell her to have a friend named Fraser come pick up a tire on the side of the house that had come off of his Bronco. Now, when police search the home, they don't seize the tire, because at that point, I don't think the tire suspected anything. And I don't even know what the fuck the importance of the tire is or why it came off the Bronco. But it was just weird because then in another phone call with his sister and his wife, Damon would tell his sister to go get the thing. His sister would then go over there and get the tire. So I don't know what the importance of the tire was or why it needed to go, but I feel like there was something on it. Maybe that's what her body was on.
Or maybe they were worried about, or he was worried about, like, the tire tread of where he dumped the body.
I don't know, but it was real weird because he really wanted that tire gone. Now, Curtis Ward, Damon's nephew, would testify that him and Damon had a close relationship and that they hung out at Damon's mom's house and at a bookie joint or Damon's grandpa's house that happened to be on 95th and Broad, which would be argued is why Damon's cell phone was in the area, not because he was dumping a body. Curtis would say that Damon had sometimes picked up prostitutes in the area of Western Avenue and preferred younger women around 18, 19 years old. After Damon had been arrested, he had talked to him, and Damon asked for him to check to see if there were any cameras around his grandmother's house. Curtis would go to check it out, but there weren't any. Now, the jury would convict 36-year-old Damon of first-degree murder, assault by means of force that produced great bodily harm, forcible rape, forcible sodomy, and forcible oral copulation.
Is this for the girl that lived?
Yeah. So the first-degree murder was for Terry, and then they combined both trials for Patricia and for Terry. Now, initially they tried to have them separated, but because they're so similar, and then when you pair in the girlfriend, that he's got the same pattern. That is why they're paired together, is because they're so, like, you can see the trend.
Mm-hmm.
But he is sentenced to a total of 49 years to life in a state prison. He got 25 years to life for the murder, and 3 8-year sentences for sexual assault, 4 years for bodily harm, and 2 $10,000 restitution fines.
Right. And that's all fine and dandy. However, are those all running concurrent or?
His first parole date is December 2032.
You're right. So all those years, the longest time is 25 years. All the rest of those dates just mean nothing.
Pretty much.
It's stupid.
It's disgusting. I don't like California.
Wow.
So that made me stumble upon the elderly parole program.
What?
I know. I kind of want to see how many states have it, or if this is just a California thing. So basically, if they're not condemned or a life sentence without parole, depending on the sentence, their first parole hearing will be scheduled once they have either 1, at least served 20 consecutive years and at least reached the age of 50, or been incarcerated at least 25 continuous years and at least reached the age of 60. But because of his sentence is why his is in the 32s.
That's stupid.
It was asinine. And I get California is way over. Like, I think the prison he's currently in is meant to house 2,000 prisoners, but there are like 3,500 currently there. I'm not 100% sure where they put them all.
You know what?
But
fucking stack them on top of each other. I don't care. It turns out if they would actually execute their death row people, it might clear up some space.
Right. I'll flip the switch.
Turns out if you go with the harsher punishments, people might get their shit together.
So Damon does address those who testified, saying he did not kill Terry and that the police know who did it and don't want to tell y'all.
Right.
Now, there was a story that Damon heard from his cellmate that Terry's dad, Michael Wright, had heard from Gunther Daniels that a robbery had taken place and that a pimp was branded and that the killing of Terry was retaliation. The pimp's street name was Tiny Black Rag, or TR, and that someone had killed Terry because he asked him to. Now, the police were apparently told of this, but since there are no other names provided and the inmate who supposedly heard the story from somebody who told somebody doesn't want to tell his name, it's basically one of those, this is like quadruple hearsay.
Yeah.
And you don't have any actual evidence. It's just somebody heard something of somebody else told somebody else.
It sounds extremely legitimate.
Yeah. Police said that they get tons of false leads when there's a lot of media coverage on the case. And there was a lot of media coverage for this area. Mainly because, again, when you put on there that a 17-year-old high school senior who's otherwise been a good girl and had plans and dreams and all of that, I didn't find out about the whole prostituting thing until I read the court documents, because I didn't see any of that on the news, and I can understand why they didn't air it, because she wasn't, I guess she technically was dabbling in prostitution that day, but I don't know if that warrants calling her a prostitute. She made an error,
no,
a little bit of a hiccup on a Saturday night.
No, that's not a little bit of a hiccup. That was 6 fellers, and again, I'm not trying to victim shame, but it sounds like she done cannonballed right into that prostitution. It's not like it was a one and done, take her money and leave. No, she kept going back. So that was the start of a really bad decision. And to all them high school seniors out there, or even early college year females, there's other ways to make money. Keep your legs closed, keep your mouth shut, and keep your hands to yourself.
Yeah.
And again, that doesn't give any guy the right to put his hands on you.
Or his penis in you.
Right. But if you choose to go that route, I don't recommend. But you still have the right to say no. Fellers, they still have the right to say no.
Yes. And that goes for the fellers, too. You don't have to take it in your ass either. Now, one thing...
Sorry, I can't. I fucking can't. You can't just...
You can't just say... No, you can't say that... No means no, that kind of pep talk only applies to the females. The males can be raped, too. You did a case last week.
This one, that case won't air until after this one. But I was just sitting here thinking about how We've done a lot of anal raping cases, and I feel like we need to both clear our search history.
Well, you know what I thought? The bittersweet part of this one would be he really likes anal sex. He'll get his fill now.
He sure will. However, I don't think was expecting to be on the receiving end.
Well, he might be giving it to. He's 6 foot something.
Oh.
He's not a small dude, so I don't feel like he'll be taking it unless. I mean, I do hope somebody, like, it's a group jail gangbang. Hey, if they're piling them up all in the same bed, there's a possibility.
Yeah.
But I hope that he is, because even if he lets run down and he's being set up, which I roll. Even what he did to that chick Patricia, he's a fucking piece of shit garbage. Well, I guess Patricia and TT, they both lived, so we know full well that that's the pattern of his behavior. I fully believe that he did it to Terry, and she was sitting somewhere for a day while he had to figure out what to do with her. I don't know why he set her on fire.
To try to destroy evidence.
Yeah, probably so.
Poor thing.
Mm-hmm. I do feel like, I guess it could be possible that he did rape her and then somebody else did the murdering.
Okay, that is possible. I was watching the I Survived shows. Dude, I saw this one case where this 13-year-old girl went to a middle school dance with her boyfriend. She had taken the bus. He offered to walk her to the bus stop. She's like, no, I'm fine. You can go ahead and go home. Again, she's 13. 2 men approach her while she's sitting at her bus stop waiting to go home, pull her in behind a building, and they take turns raping her. And then after they're done brutally assaulting this little girl, she can barely walk. Her bus is no longer running because it's so late that she starts to walk several blocks to get home. And some other feller sees her, and he's older, and he's like, what's wrong with you? She's got blood dripping down her legs. And she tells him, I was just raped by 2 men and they beat me up. The guy opens his jacket pocket, pulls out a gun, points it at her, and says, come with me or I'm going to kill you. He takes her into an abandoned building where he rapes and sodomizes her for hours. I was just like, this poor kid.
He's having a real bad day.
And that was when Jason came upstairs, by the way, and he saw what I was watching, and he's taking out his contacts, and he's in the bathroom, and he could hear the TV. He turned around and just looked at me and blinked, and he goes, what the fuck is wrong with you? And I was like, what?
You should see my search history.
He was like, why would you choose to watch something like this? And I was like, you know what? Just because you don't hear it happens doesn't mean it didn't. And this poor girl, 13 years old. And by the way, the 2 fellers never get caught. The older fella, she ended up going to the store with her mom like a week later and spotted him on the side of the road, says, Mommy, that's him. Mom pulls over, calls the cops from a payphone, and then the guy gets arrested.
Should have sped up.
Right? He turned out to be like a serial rapist killer person. And I was just like, that's insane. What area, because I missed the beginning, did this poor girl live in that walking or sitting in a bus stop, she gets assaulted by 2 men who never get caught, and then
a third,
and then gets assaulted by a third random dude? Like, that poor baby.
I would say it's time to move.
Hell yeah. But so it is entirely possible, to tie it back to your case, that he could have just done the raping and somebody else did the murdering, but
yeah,
I don't know. That's pretty horrifying.
I feel like since the Bronco was seen right over there and it looked like he was at the back of his car.
Yeah, odds are that he's just a solid piece of shit.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going with that because I think he is a piece of shit.
He is.
I also cringed at, dude, 2032 is not that far out.
It's not.
But I do hope he takes a lot of dicks to the face and has a bunch of lip injuries.
Has some missing teeth.
Mm-hmm.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Homicide Hobbies. If we made you laugh, if we made you cry, or if we mindfucked you for the day, then we thank you for listening. Please write a review on whatever you're listening to us on. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers. We're freaking awesome. And join us next week for another episode of Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy.
And I'm Claire.
That's all we've got.